All right, everybody. Welcome to this particular unusual episode of Ascension with A Course in Miracles. But we are doing a live conversation about discussion, whatever you want to call it, dialogue about spirituality and politics. And today is, what is it, November the 14th. So unlike the transmissions, this is really where you get to ask questions, and I will do my best to answer from a place where I tap into my truth. And also, as a teacher of A Course in Miracles for over 10 years, I will share my knowledge, and it will be a continuation from the 10 points that I shared yesterday about how A Course in Miracles sees politics. And I mean, it was absolutely life-changing for me when I began to understand how A Course in Miracles views politics. And that is why the series starting on next Wednesday is going to be based on one particular lesson, which is entitled, I am under no laws but God's, because when we understand God's laws, then everything about this world begins to make sense. Okay, we got a few more people coming in here. Oh, so nice to see them all. All right, everybody, welcome. And as I just said, today we are going to focus on you asking questions, and I'll answer them to the best of my ability. And know that my answers come from my experience with A Course in Miracles and my own connection to the divine. So I'm going to say, take what resonates, leave what doesn't. And I ask everybody to, well, I see everybody that's here. It's going to be a lovely, respectful, and beautiful conversation. So you guys get to take basically the mic. So ask questions, unmute yourself, ask a question, make a comment, and then we'll get the dialogue rolling from there. But for those of you who just joined us, I was saying that starting next Wednesday, I am going to use A Course in Miracles, or we're going to go over the lesson, I am under no laws but God's, which is lesson 76 in the Course in Miracles book. All right, everybody. Who wants to start? And it doesn't have to be a question. You can share a comment, and then we can look at that through the lens of A Course in Miracles. Because one of the important things about being open-minded, which is a characteristic of one who really truly understands the Course, and tolerant and gentle, is to be willing to be corrected according to the Course in Miracles, not according to Laina, but according to the Course in Miracles, which is a teaching of the highest calibration of truth, of actual reality with a capital R, because it is what God is, God says. So if we're wanting to raise our vibration from the lower frequencies and achieve a higher state of consciousness, then we're moving towards truth. So then we allow truth to guide us. Where's Miss Lorelei? She wanted a dialogue.
Good morning.
Hello, Miss Stacy.
So I wanted to sit in on this before what's going on now, and my journey with you and Course in Miracles. I've never really been interested in politics, and I don't know or understand a lot about politics. So the more I've been learning and aligning that with what's true for me, it's very interesting to watch both sides. I was on Facebook this morning, and I was somebody that I know had posted some stuff about not being happy with the present situation, and she was talking about some of what she believes is true. And so being able to read that with an open mind and knowing that we all have our journey and navigating through um, this, um, because she was talking about Project 2025, and I've never heard of that, and just all this kind of, she was talking about masculine, feminine, divine, and um, weaving that all in together. And I don't know if I'm making sense, um, but being able to um, learn what you guys have to offer, and um, and seeing the truth with that, and staying neutral to be able to listen to everybody's perspective, and it's okay where everybody is. Does that make sense?
Totally, totally. And I would say, to establish kind of a level playing field, if you will, here. We exist in the mind of God. We are safe because what we are is consciousness. What we are is non-physical, call it energy. So we're all safe in that place when we know the truth of what we are. God is, and we are that. We're an aspect of that. Then when we look at it from, well, then how if we're non-physical energy, why do we have physical bodies? Because we chose to incarnate on this planet, in this dimension, a planet of duality, a planet of polarity, a planet where we can test out the waters of how far from the truth can we go, where we can say, how dark can we get, where we can play with anything that is possible, because the creative source gave us free will, and it truly does not affect that which is all that is, but it affects us in our physical experience as an individuated aspect of creation. So from that perspective, understanding politics is very helpful. And the reason it's helpful is because politics in its real sense should be representatives of the people that go in service to maintain certain things that are for the benefit of the greater good. So, for example, those who serve to maintain law and order, those who serve to protect borders. While we are in human form in this third dimension, we believe in separation. We believe in, this is my land and that's your land. This is my area, that's your area. This is my state, that's your state. This is my city, that's your city. My county, your county. So while we are operating in those ideas of separation, then law and order is necessary, because in the world of duality, we have an ego. An ego is always, always, always in service to itself. So while we have people who are operating from the lower frequencies, and they're operating from that place where you haven't done the inner work to know that you are a divine being having a human experience, and you think you're just a human, and your mindset is influenced and formed by your upbringing, the programming that you receive from the people who help raise you, including mother, fathers, teachers, preachers, government, media, and you're influenced with information that taps into your own personal experience of life. Meaning, as a child, if you were raised by people who said who you are is amazing, magnificent, you're smart, you're capable, then there's a certain certain belief system that gets formed in that level of confidence and certainty and service. But if you grow up in an environment that says you're not good enough, you're never going to amount to anything, you're physically abused, emotionally abused, sexually abused, your sense of self, those lower chakras, hold the energy of, I'm not good enough and I can't make it, or nobody loves me. That influences the egoic aspect of becoming a victim, to balance that out. Because if you don't balance being a victim and being totally, completely down and depressed with the energy of bully, those are the people who tend to be so depressed that, they cannot function in society, or they commit suicide because they've gone down so low. The energy of bully, believe it or not, raises your ability to function, because now you have a driving force. So the victim and the bully are always going to be hand in hand, one frequency just above the other, bully being a little higher than victim. Again, because victim is powerless and bully feels like it has power because it utilizes the energy of revenge. I have a chart. When we understand the energies that we're operating from, when we really get clear that this energy that we are seeks to be in motion, but it seeks to be in motion in service. That is what creative source is. I'm here to serve. But if we are raised and feel like I can't be me, then that energy gets pressed down, suppressed, and it creates a sense of powerlessness. To move out of that, you cannot jump from powerlessness to, okay, I am totally okay in the snap of your fingers, because nobody moves to powerlessness without it taking time. It's a process, lifetimes, as a matter of fact. In this particular lifetime, it's a process that starts from the moment of conception. And as we suppress ourselves, then we need to find ways to express ourselves. So things like Project 2025, and I'm a little familiar with it. When you look at things like that and you read them, you can see, when you're self-aware of the energies that run our emotions, when you become aware of where you're at with your ego, what kind of relationship you have with your ego. Most people are unaware, totally unaware that they have an ego. I mean, a lot of people think they have an ego and that's their inflated sense of self, but it's also your deflated sense of self. And that's why people don't understand the ego, because it's two sides of the same coin. As I said earlier, victim, bully coexist. However, something like Project 2025, if you don't have a good understanding for why these people have put this together, you miss the entire point of what is said in there. Now, do I agree with all of it? Not all of it, but are there some things that from my perspective make sense? Absolutely. Because what Project 25 is people who came together. I believe it's a Heritage Foundation who created that, who did the research and put that together. And they've looked at the behaviors that people have that are in service to themselves, the things that are done that are selfish, the things that are done that are greedy. And they were attempting from their place to say, we don't want more of that. Now, you could look at that as, well, that's being a bully and trying to tell people what to do. Or you could look at that and see, where do some of those things make sense for the collective? And when people get all upset about Project 2025, or anything for that matter, if they're upset and blaming that and saying that thing is going to try and control me, that thing is not balanced, masculine, feminine, because when you read it, it does seem overall, again, I haven't studied everything in depth, but I've listened to enough talks about it and read enough headlines about it to see, somebody could say, well, that's more masculine than, more patriarchal than feminine. If you don't understand that feminine, the energy of feminine, masculine and feminine from a higher perspective, is a very balanced collaboration. It's what source is. Source is masculine and feminine. Feminine is the penetrating source that creates. Feminine is the womb that holds that creation and nurtures it. They have to work hand in hand. If you're not balanced within yourself, if you believe that you're a woman and you've got to go battle the man, or you think you're a man and you have power over the woman, you're going to read everything and anything from the perspective that you're at. So anybody who is blaming or judging anything, the first thing that tells me is that they don't know who they are. because now they're saying this thing has power to hurt me. This thing has power to save me. And nothing outside of us has power, because everything is a manifestation of who we are. And now we've got to take into account individuals and then collectives. So when you have a group of individuals who've done some work, maybe not all the work, to understand exactly who we are according to like A Course in Miracles, or looking at a chart of emotions or a map of consciousness, then there are aspects of ego that are involved, and ego tends to want to control things. So there are so many layers of self-awareness that are necessary to be able to look at everything and see it objectively, and then ask the question, what about this is good for the collective? What about this is not? And humanity is not at a place collectively that it can make that small groups of people can make decisions for the collective, because there's still too much ego, too much greed, too much selfishness involved. So I don't know if that answers your question or gives more context to it, but it's important that we open ourselves up to question things, but then look at them through a lens that is non-judgmental. And that is the lens of God. How does God see this? And then look at, well, okay, where am I? So that we can become honest about, where am I here? Am I reacting, or am I observing something and bringing forth a comment that I think would make this thing better? And humanity is not collectively at a place where we can do that, but we are at a place where it is time, because there are enough of us who can see things from that higher spiritual place that can bring forth the opening for dialogue. Because when we can begin to talk to each other and listen to each other, there's more soul than ego involved. And those are the opportunities that are becoming evident right now. Is so much of the world, especially in the spiritual community, that is still not operating primarily from an open-minded and tolerant, gentle place yet. But we're getting there. Does that help, Stacy?
Yes, very much. Thank you.
Of course. Anybody want to share any comments or have any other questions around that? Or something else?
Yes.
Hello, Mike.
Hello, Laina. You talked about this yesterday, and I'm going to bring up a couple points. First of all, I don't disagree with anything you say, but I want to, I guess, share another perspective. You mentioned yesterday how we're here and we rebirth over and over again, and to come down and play the game. To play the game. So if we keep in mind that we're here playing a game, and yet we're looking at politics seriously, seriousness is of the ego.
Yeah.
I have a hard time, and we talked about this back in 2019 when the elections were going on. I just have a hard time of taking that seriously. And what I've been studying now since I've retired, I read A Course in Miracles again, Way of Mastery, but I'm really doing a deep dive into A Course of Love. And it's at the point where Jesus is telling us we can't change things if we're going to try and change them from the house of illusion to the house of illusion. We've got to go to the house of truth.
Yep.
So if the house of truth is love, forgiveness, serving, I'm just not sure I see the connection between taking politics so seriously while we understand life is a game and we're here to enjoy.
Yeah. And that is a brilliant, wonderful observation. And let me rephrase what I mean by taking politics seriously and everything that's happening in the world seriously, is to recognize it for the energy that we have given it. And when we take it seriously, meaning we have contributed to the creation of that pocket within the game called incarnation. Meaning, we have fed that machine. We have paid taxes playing into feeding that machine. We send stuff over there. We elect people, and then we say, okay, you take care of it. I don't want anything to do with that. Which is okay if we had a transparent system and we could check and see, okay, I sent you money and I voted for you, and what are you doing? Let me see it if I want to look at it. But at this frequency that we're at, the pocket of inside of the game, you see the whole game of incarnation, then there's politics over here. If we look at it from a vibrational perspective, it is right now in very low frequency. It is not too different than the monarchies where the kings could behead people who said things that they didn't like. Today, we can pretty much do the same thing. Censoring them is like cutting their heads off, is cutting their throats off. You know, you can't speak. We're going to shut your throat chakra. You can't. We don't like what you're saying because it goes against what we're doing. Also, when we look at politics as a way of not only controlling what people can say and do, but a permission to, through a few people, allow companies, which is another pocket of the game, people who run corporations, who run institutions, you know, but pretty much for profit things, and then they can pay these politicians. Then there's another level of the game, which is, in this reality, those who have money can control those who make the rules and the laws of the world. What's happening to me right now that is so exciting is that so many of us, and I was one of these people for decades, I vote, I send my money, and leave me alone. I'm busy over here on the treadmill of life, making money and trying to acquire more things and become somebody and get successful and blah, 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 blah. Not seeing that money that I'm sending and these people that I'm voting for are making decisions that go completely against my own morality. And as I became more conscious of who I am as a divine being, and I began to accept more of the power that I have, that I am creating in this illusion, I am assisting in the making of a system, albeit a small pocket in the whole of the illusion. I'm giving them a lot of power and I'm giving them money, meaning I'm funding, and by my participation, albeit very unconscious in many ways because I didn't really know what they were doing, I am supporting a system that is harming our brothers and sisters. So when the Course in Miracles says that salvation of the world depends on me, and I got to that place, I then could not look at what politics was about anymore. I had to, and that's really when I began to pay attention. Around 2014 is when I began to pay attention to politics. And that's when I began to recognize, and this was about 10 years after I started having my journey, my spiritual journey began, I had to look at what was happening, not to shame myself for being ignorant and not to judge myself for sending the money that I was sending and discovering the things that they were doing with it, but it empowered me to look at that and recognize I can do something about this. Because if the salvation of the world depends on me, that can only be done by one who becomes conscious and takes responsibility for what is happening. So yes, it's a game. And from one level, from the level that we understand it's a game and we're conscious that it's a game, and no souls ever get hurt in any of these experiments, from that place, yes, we don't take anything seriously. This is just consciousness going through a dance, and it's perfectly okay. But from the level of being a human in the world, just as Jesus was, he was an example of that. Martin Luther King was an example of that. Some of us are being inspired to be voices that bring about change, to take action, that bring about change, and being able to look at that with the understanding that it's a game, so there's no need to judge it, but with the understanding that you're in the game and you're experiencing the game, your children are experiencing, your grandchildren are experiencing, then what do I want to take responsibility for to contribute to the co-creation of a better game, of a more joyful game, which the Course in Miracles calls the happy dream. So, the Course taught me to look at everything from two levels: God's perspective, and then the human perspective, the ego perspective, and begin to work with both of them until such time that we have risen in consciousness enough that we're operating informed by God and not the ego. And that is the happy dream. And that is what, when we see people who are participating in, whether it be the political system, the medical system, education system, with an intent, and they're vocal about it, so we know what they're saying and we know where they're coming from, with an intent to do things that are more transparent and for the greater good of all, that lets us know that there is less selfishness, less greed, less egoic, and more desire to do things in service. So I don't know if that helps, but we're having to balance our God self and our ego self, and move up from the ego self more towards God. And that requires not only willingness, it requires responsibility once you can see more clearly, and it requires a holding a vision of what is possible, because our thoughts create our reality. We are the cause of everything that we see out there. So there are lots of aspects at play in this becoming spiritual and waking up game. It's a game within the game, and it's fascinating. But thank you for that. Does that help, Mike? Here, let's get you to, there we go.
I certainly understand your perspective. I really do. And I think it's just wonderful how we can all, as we travel our paths, we look at things differently. None of it's right, none of it's wrong. I think at this point in our spiritual path, we're coming from love primarily. We remember forgiveness. And where I'm not going to act from your perspective, and I'll continue, I guess, to act from mine. But it's all love. It's all based on love. And I just really wanted to hear how you connected it.
And thank you for saying that. And you should act from your perspective, because in you is the divine guidance. And every single one of us, when we look at the whole of this game, and we look at it as a spiral, and I had a visual I sent to my graphic guy yesterday and said, okay, I've got this idea. We're going to look at the spiral of creation. We're going to look at this, but from the top, instead of from the side, from the top. The spiral of creation, let me do it. It's a circle, and like any spiral, it gets small in the middle, and then it expands on the outside. We are on all points of that spiral, on different levels of consciousness in the spiral, in different perspectives of the spiral, different ages, different cultures, because the diversity of perspectives is part of what this third dimension is all about. It's rich with different things. The lower we are in terms of, the tighter we are in that spiral, the more ego influenced we are, the selfish we are, the harder it is to hear somebody else's opinion, because that is when we're being more childish. Because the ego is childish. The ego is, the perspectives of the ego are set in childhood based on the traumas and the influences that we have. The more we can move outward in the spiral and move into places of recognizing that there are different perspectives, that is not just, we've been conditioned to believe that there's really two sides to everything, but there's not. It's not just the red or the blue, or the this football team or that one. It's not just this religion or that one. There are thousands upon thousands of perspectives. And the more we mature, and like you said, it requires love, the easier it becomes to listen to what somebody else has to say and to take what resonates and leave what doesn't. And in that very loving, respectful dance, we will co-create a new earth that recognizes everybody's freedom. Well, you can go back to the Constitution, back to our founding fathers and the documents that were written. All men and women are created equal, and we're all endowed with the same inalienable rights. And when we begin to respect that, and as humans that don't understand who God is, what God is, and where God is, because we've been conditioned by religion that it's God is out there somewhere, then we have something that humans wrote, even though it's influenced by God, as a basic document that would allow everybody to have the liberties and the opportunities that are possible. So politics, to me, their rightful purpose are people who willingly serve to represent their constituents and uphold those exact same liberties all the way around, without making exceptions for themselves, without making exceptions for their friends, whoever pays them. And that, to me, is only possible when we bring love to the equation, as you said. Whether you want to serve or not, at least we get to see everything transparently because it's being done for the greater good of all. And to me, I think that that's what we're on the cusp of. We're not there yet, but we're moving in that trajectory. And that's coming, but it's not going to come without its challenges. Who else has comments or questions? I so appreciate you guys sharing.
Hi, Laina. This is
Hello.
Laina. Hey, so I'm losing my voice. That's why I am not on camera. But you know, everybody said what Mike said was so beautiful. You know, and I'm sorry.
No worries. Thanks for being here.
I keep talking about or thinking about Daddy. You know, our political views are so different. I'm at the point, or we're in the point, I don't talk at all to him about politics, and I don't want, you know, and we keep our peace that way because it's okay for him to like his thoughts or to his beliefs, you know, and mine, our mind. And I just kind of feel that we go in spurts. One team's happy, the other team's not. Then the other team's happy, then the other team's not. It's just we go back to this back and forth. And the media and everybody wants us to keep it like that instead of all coming together and saying, you know what, it's okay. You know what I mean? I find so much hate or people get so into their own beliefs that they don't want to listen to anything else. And I'm myself too. Totally. You know, I think I'm the one that's right, you know, but it does help just to get out a little bit and just not make that the core beliefs. I hope I'm making sense.
You are.
I'm on Theraflu right now, so I'm a little loopy. You know, it's like, and I'll just put it out there. I mean, I am so happy now. I felt, you know, the last 4 years were so hard. You couldn't talk, you couldn't do anything. You were so scared of doing anything. And I'm like, why? Why do I have to be worried about what anybody else thinks? That's their problem. You know, I respect their problem. I don't care what anybody does. I just wish they would give the back to, you know, the same respect. It just, anyway, well, that's how I feel. I'm just, it's our turn to be happy now. I'm obviously a conservative. You know, last 4 years were so hard, mentally, physically, everything. It was just so hard. But then you got people that were so happy with everything. They had no problem, you know, with all the shit that was going on in the planet and the wars and stuff. And it's hard for me to understand how anybody could be so happy with that. But that's okay. That they're okay with that. You know, I need to be okay with them being okay with that. But you know,
Thank you. Thank you so much for your comments. And you're entitled to the miracle of your throat healing. So I see you feeling better soon. One thing that you said is so important to understand. When we're operating in the lower frequencies of the ego, from pride down, those lower frequencies, and not to go off too much on a tangent, but every frequency, we also have connection to God, but it's less connection. So up here, we're connected to God while we're in physical form. Let's say 90% children are listening to that inner voice. 10% is the ego and selfishness. Around 2, then it's all about me, it's mine. Ego gets stronger. As ego gets stronger, we listen to that more. When we move down into the levels of pride, which gets solidified by our teenage years, then it's all about me, it's selfish, I don't care who gets hurt. We're listening to ego more 95% of the time. And the voice of God becomes lesser and quieter and less frequent, that we go to that place of pureness. But you can't be down here in the lowest frequency of shame. And the only thing that gets you out is your connection to God. Even if you only listen to it a little bit, that still quiet voice will assist us. So the point that you made, that every 4 years we flip-flop, or 8 years, depending on re-elections. The flip-flopping is we move from victim to bully. On this lower frequencies, the pendulum swings, victim to bully. And we have been conditioned to be okay with the swinging of the pendulum, because we have been conditioned that there's only right and wrong. And if you're on the victim side of what's happening, then you're feeling wronged. If the pendulum swings to the other side and you're on the righteous thing of things, I'm right, then you're going to be in bully mode. You don't care who you hurt if the ego is what's running things. Something that has been so important for me to understand, and I didn't get too deep into this, but just enough to recognize that in this world, this third dimensional world, anything is possible. And it is possible for beings on this planet, or if you are comfortable with understanding that some things are happening off planet, then if you move down that path, you begin to realize that there are beings of very high intelligence, but very little heart connection. And when you move to places of high intelligence and you understand how to manipulate the mind, because the Course in Miracles is a course to help us train our mind out of ego into God. When people train their minds out of ego and move to God, just as Mike said, you become more loving. There's no need to control anybody else. Like you were saying, you live and let live. But those who understand how to control the mind and don't have a connection to their heart, but there's that high intelligence. You go back and look at some famous psychologists, like oh goodness, now I'm drawing a blank on his name. Famous psychologist or psychiatrist, Freud. He understood how to manipulate somebody's mind, because that's what he studied. He studied psychology. And if you tell somebody, and you don't need to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist to understand that if you say demeaning things to a child, it's going to grow up either thinking really poorly of themselves, they go more to the victim side, I'm not good enough, or they will become a bully and take that out, throw that hot potato on somebody else and bully their sister, if they happen to be, let's say, the older sibling. When you understand how to manipulate the mind, then you understand how to keep people from connecting to their heart. Religion has done a wonderful job of that. Not all religion is manipulative, but a lot of it, when it moves into dogma and this is the only way and you have to do it this way and this is the only right religion, there is a lot of manipulation of the mind to keep people in a state of submission. As you do your inner work, and you begin to move out, you see that what happened to you is happening to the collective. So when we understand the information like that we had from Freud, and then you are willing with a tolerant mind, an open mind, to do some research and look at the players upon this planet, then you can begin to see that what Freud said his nephew, Edward Bernays, took as a way to help governments, to help advertising agencies psychologically manipulate people. So when again, you've got to be in a place that you're no longer reacting to things like this, because somebody who reads this, what do you mean advertising agencies have been manipulating us? We all kind of know that we're influenced into this political party or that one, this beverage or that soda, or this buy this product versus that product. When we widen back and sit and look at, why is this world in so much chaos? Why do every 4 years we have one group that's happy, one group that's unhappy? And you mentioned the media, then you look out and you begin to see the levels of control that are there. We have those, we'll call them the 1%, the 1% of the 1%. Very few people we hardly ever hear about, with a lot of money and a lot of influence, who clearly in service to self, because these things wouldn't happen in secret if it was service for the greater good. Everything would be transparent. And you begin to take a widened back approach by understanding the psychology, understanding why are people behaving the way they are, because their minds have been trained to listen to external sources, not to their inner source of truth. Then you can begin to see the process of control that has been taking place, where very few who influence politics, who own the corporations, who want to sell products, have basically turned humanity into a bunch of consumers, blocking our creator's ability. When we are not generating things that bring us joy, that bring us, that serve humanity, a song serves humanity. The person who writes it and the one who hears it, cooking a beautiful meal for your family helps humanity. The one that gets to cook it and pick the fruit and the veggies that somebody grew, that they love doing the things in the soil, and they love bringing it to a market and bringing it to you, and then you participate in that chain of love, and you cook it for your family, and you make your family's bodies healthier, and they grow up to be healthy beings. As creators, we participate in a chain of events, cause and effect, that always expands and allows for everybody to feel healthy and wealthy and happy, expressing themselves. When we don't understand, as I said earlier, you pay your taxes and you let somebody else manage things, and you're not paying attention because you're busy over here being a consumer, buying things and acquiring things and becoming something, which you don't need any of that to feel whole and complete. But we are conditioned. Advertising tells us we need this new thing. We need that thing. We need to live in this area, well, this side of the track versus that side of the tracks. While we are consuming, in the consumption, we become clear what is right, what is wrong, from an egoic perspective. And we want people who let us consume what we want to consume and do it how we want to do it, with no checks and balances, or as little as possible. On the other side, when you're a creator, you're paying attention to the flow of everything, because in this world, we are here to operate in collaboration. That's why we have diversity. That's why we have so many different cultures, because culture is a beautiful thing. Differences are a beautiful thing. They add to the richness. I mean, if we only had one ingredient and we were going to make soup, we would always be drinking water, and that would be it, or just salt, and that would be it, or just, carrots, and that would be it. That's kind of boring. So to create, as a creator, we are to use diversity and bring it together in a beautiful way. When those who are controlling things and are in service to self without us knowing it, because we become consumers and we watch the media that it's run by a certain group, and we look at the ads that are run by a certain group, and we are taught to become worshipers of idols. I just did a whole section in A Course in Miracles in chapter 30, looking at idols and how we have been manipulated into worshiping this person, this movie star, that sports figure, all of that, so we can become consumers of what they feed us. The Course in Miracles is to teach us how to train our mind out of that very, very small way of looking at things, being at the center of that spiral, where if you look at the movie The Matrix, it was a documentary, in my opinion, a documentary of what has happened to our minds. We see that we've all become like batteries. Our energy is being siphoned off to continue to produce, to consume what is being produced, and to produce as workers, and to stay in a space of so exhausted at the end of the day, at the end of the 5 days of work. And what we're beginning to see is that as we pull out of that way of doing things, we begin to realize that as a creator, we don't want to keep doing things the same old way. But to be able to move out of doing things the same old way, and every 4 years swing, the pendulum swing, we've got to pull out and see, how did we contribute to it? And in the looking at how we contributed to it, then we learn, we become self-aware. What am I judging about this person or that person? Like you said, your dad sees things one way and you see it another way, and you can't even have a conversation. Why can't we have conversations? When you step back, then you can begin to see we can't have conversations because we've been told, oh, we talk about everything except for religion and politics. The movies say that, the media says that, but somehow, churches say that we keep politics away from this. Well, it's all one thing. It's all humans operating at different levels of consciousness, some in service to self, some in service to the greater good. And that's really it. So if we can pull back and look who is attempting to serve themselves and who is serving the greater good, we could collectively stop certain things, stop consuming certain things. Look at what's happening to mainstream media. They're losing viewers left and right because people are pulling back and going, wait a second, what you said to me doesn't match with what these people say to me, or with the reality of what I just witnessed. And that allows us to then become self-aware. It allows us to look at things from different perspectives. Back to what, again, Mike said, we will look at things from different perspectives, but when we're operating from a desire of respect for one another, because we've respected ourselves enough to not put the frequency of judgment in us, then, okay, you can have that opinion. I can have this opinion. Nobody needs to blast and yell and shame and do those things, because we're operating in a level of respect for God's created diversity. Now, Jody, I see your hand. I'll come to you in one quick second. When we understand, because this requires that we really move out, when we move out and look at the bigger picture, then we can see that we're in the middle of a bifurcation. And that bifurcation means that we're shifting. There is a massive shift that is taking place. Those who want to operate more from ego are literally causing the effect of a world that is going to be more egocentric, meaning the victims are going to need a bully to control them, and the controllers are going to need victims who will play that game. That is happening. It's very obvious to one who can see what's the way the mind works. When you are choosing to be more love-based, you want freedom. You can see the double standards that the ego creates, because the ego, like the Course in Miracles says, is insane. And you can then see that insanity. Say one thing and do something else, and want everybody to think that you didn't do the thing that you said you don't do, because the video's there. You can see it. When you are more committed to the higher frequency of love, collaboration, co-creation, you're moving to the co-creation of a happy dream, a world where that exists, and there's a timeline split. If you're too focused on your own stuff and you're not paying attention to the bigger picture, you're going to be moved as the effect of a cause within you, which is your vibrational frequency. We've not been told that everybody knows E equals MC squared and energy equals matter. But when you look at what that means, we are affecting our energy based on the thoughts that we're thinking. Are they egoically, fear-based, controlling, lying, cheating, service to self? Or are you thinking service to the greater good, transparency, have nothing to hide? Because when you're operating with God, you're singular. You don't have double standards. What you do for you do for others, and you uphold that for everybody else. To look at politics from that lens, or the medical world or the education system, it's easy to see why the systems are breaking down, because there are more beings. Well, let me say this differently. There are enough beings that are in the service to the greater good, meaning their frequency is much higher. One person operating like that, like Jesus, is more powerful than millions who are in fear. So it doesn't take that many to move to a place that recognizes what is in service to the greater good and begin to co-create that reality. So if you don't know what's happening, the pendulum's going to keep swinging for a very short period of time. Pretty soon, that pendulum there is going to be a split where the pendulum is only going to be on this side, and others will have built their house on solid rock. The solid rock is an understanding of who we are as God created us, and love is the foundation. So I don't know if that helps, Layla, or not. Hopefully that gives a little extra perspective. All right, Miss Jody, you had your hand up.
Yes, I was about 15 minutes late, but I'm glad you had this today.
No worries. Thank you.
So I don't know the lady's last name who spoke, but I wanted to respond to that. And I also wanted to respond to what you said, because you clarified what's going on for me around bully victim between every 4 years or every 8 years. So where I hate to use the word struggle, because that's my ego, right? But where I am getting caught in my ego is I have been independent but voted for Democrat my whole life. And then the last 6 weeks, I went gazelle crazy looking for truth, right? For my, it doesn't mean it's right or wrong. It's just what I found. And I'm very grounded in that truth today. What I find very maddening and the insanity is when I've tried to talk to anybody that is still a Democrat, the level of bullying is insane, even from friends. It's just, and it can be very subtle. And there's blatant bullying that you can see. Oh, they're all Hitlers or not, whatever. There's that. I'm not even talking about that. There's a subtlety of, oh, you must have had the Kool-Aid or dismissiveness. That's not what I'm talking about. Or you share a video and just complete denial about it. And what's happening for me on a spiritual level is, it's like I've been evolving, that thing behind you, the spiral. It's like I go up in my vibration and I, and then I get caught a little bit, but this one's knocked me on my ass because I just want to scream and go, wake the fuck up. I don't mean it, wake the fuck up, see what I see, because that's not what I'm talking about. Because everybody has a right to see and believe and have their own perceptions. I mean, wake the fuck up to you're being a bully and dismissive. And I don't think, had I not been curious and worked with you for years and been a student of the Course in Miracles, I don't think because I have the ability to look at my ego and my bullshit, I have the ability to question everything. So it's such a gift. But sometimes I feel like I'm in crazy town, like it's a twilight zone. I think that this is obviously we say every irritation is an invitation. So this is an irritation of mine. And sometimes I catch myself lowering my vibration and making a comment or sharing a video. They didn't ask for the video, so it's my problem. I get it. I get it's my problem. But I want to make it their problem. And I'm just so, I feel like it's because when I was growing up, my mom said one thing and my mom would say, it's a blue sky, and it would be really raining. And my dad would say, it is a blue sky. And that's what I feel like is happening today. So it's a very, it's a golden opportunity for me to grow through my own egoic crap. But I just want to go around. My ego wants to wake everybody up. That's it.
Yeah, I love your candidness and your transparency, but you started off by saying, you know, that your ego was struggling with something. You said you're struggling. You said, well, that's my ego. So we got to look at everything from two sides. The ego does struggle because the ego wants to have its way, but source, the divine in us, the Holy Spirit, is just curious and seeks to understand. So affirm that you're looking for clarity versus I'm struggling with what is, because then you raise your frequency when you say, you know, I'm looking for clarity. This doesn't make sense. I'm looking for clarity. Just as a way to recognize that our words have power, and our words are the words that we speak come from the beliefs that we hold, and our beliefs create our reality. So just a little something to tweak there, to be more mindful so that you're always affirming what your soul is attempting to do. Course in Miracles says that we're using time to undo what was built over time. What that means is that we have thousands upon thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years of humanity operating in the, not always, but for a very long time, in the lowest frequencies of egoic selfishness, service to myself. We are at the time of harvest, where we are separating the wheat from the chaff. There are so many teachings, especially if you look at things like the law of one, the teachings of Ra, and there is a shift that is taking place. Again, a bifurcation where we are going to solidify ourselves in a fourth dimension, a fourth density reality, or some are going to remain in the third density reality because we can. So just as Jesus came 2,000 years ago, at that time, we still had the same problems. We still had the politics. We had the few people controlling things. We had religion telling people what God was and what God wasn't. And they got rid of Jesus because Jesus was bringing the truth. And the truth is that we're all God. We're all expressions of God creating this game. And we should all have equal say. But when the 1% decides what happens for the 99%, the 99% or a portion of them who are listening like you are and want clarity, they can see through the bullshit. They can see through the lies. But here's something to keep in mind. And I know that you have done so much work. You're a student of the course, and you want to see people from a loving place, and you catch yourself when you get irritated with them. It's an invitation to look within. Where do you still have forgiveness work to do? But one of the things that we have to understand is that we have free will. And those who want to see things a certain way, from a soul's perspective, their script is written. They're just telling you what they believe is the reality that they want to co-create. And if they're angry and they're judging and they're bashing, they want to lock themselves into that frequency, and they can. And which is what the people who put Jesus to death did. They locked themselves into, we are in charge, and we get rid of people who say things that we don't agree with. And Jesus locked himself in a frequency that said, well, you know what? I'm not even a body. So I'm free from this. And from that higher dimension, Jesus is still speaking to us, has spoken through so many beings over the last 2,000 years. and most recently through Course in Miracles, Course of Love, the Way of Mastery. And I'm watching more teachings that are coming from Jesus in other ways. So he locked himself into the frequency of service to the greater good, didn't even need a body for that. What we are doing right now is we have an opportunity, the first time from what I understand from all the channelings, and when I connect to source, I feel it within every fiber of my being. For the first time, we have an opportunity to not have to die and then go, oh my gosh, that is a game. We are waking up in the game and changing the game. And the only way to change the game, back to what Mike said, a more loving game, is to recognize that the ego does things and operates in a certain way. And if you've been there, done that, you have a t-shirt to prove it. I've lived in crazy ego land, and you're done with that game, you have to ground yourself in the game of compassion, kindness, forgiveness. Above all else, forgiveness, because we need to forgive people for what they never did to our soul. They never affected our soul, but they're irritating our ego. And if we're done with being an ego, we need to ground ourselves in being one who recognizes they can't create for you. They have no power to create for you. We're waking up to see that we have been manipulated. Once you start turning off the TV, stop reading the popular magazines, stop listening to the talking heads, you basically, your frequency jumps quite a few points. From that place that you're not listening to other people's opinions about what we should be doing, you can connect with God and begin to listen to what God would like to do through you, which requires that we humble ourselves. And when somebody says something mean or whatever, what could be construed as mean, then you recognize it's a projection from them, which I know you're doing. That is the opportunity for us to be an example of what it is that we're trying to get them to see. Be an example of one who's at peace, an example of one who has opinions. We're in the world. We're supposed to have opinions. We're supposed to give Caesar what is Caesar's. But what we're recognizing is that Caesar, in reference to government, to rulers, have overstepped their bounds because we now can clearly see they're not doing what we asked them to do as elected officials. They're doing what they want to do in a selfish way. When you see that, we don't need to bash them. We just need to pull our energy back. You pull your energy back by playing the game consciously. So thank you for being one, because I've been watching your post and some of the stuff that was going on, the back and forth and the shaming. And yes, it's wild, but it's just showing you how insane the ego is, making it more clear through the evidence of what you're observing that you don't want to play that game anymore.
Well, and also, can I just say also, it's not about not wanting to play their game. It's about me not wanting to play my game and forgive myself for forgetting that I am love and I don't need to engage.
Yeah.
And I can be compassionate.
Yeah. And this is where self-awareness comes in.
Yeah.
Where are you on the vibrational scale? You know, we have a wonderful, I did this chart where I took, we have so many amazing beings who have incarnated to give us information. So as I've said before, I use the map of consciousness that was given to us by our brother, Dr. David Hawkins. Maslow gave us a chart that is fabulous. And I just always put the chart next to the map of consciousness. And when you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and you understand that our basic needs, our lower chakra needs, are about physical needs, as Maslow said, food, air, water, shelter, sleep. When you understand that the air has been polluted, the water has been polluted, the food has been polluted, the ground is being polluted, and you recognize people can hardly sleep, working so many hours, so many bills to pay, the mind can get turned off because that's what happens with the ego. In survival mode, the majority of humanity is at the lowest of frequencies. Somebody who needs to be right is coming from survival. And many of these people who are in that place of the lower physical needs, I mean, look at the hunger in the world. When you do your inner work and you can look at the bigger picture, then you can begin to see, how's this happening? That's when you can begin to see the corporations that are running things, how they bought politicians, how politicians don't serve the people, but serve those who put money in their pockets. And you see the insanity. Well, you're polluting the same air and water that we all consume. You know, you can't do this and not affect, you can't pollute the air and not affect all air. You begin to recognize that there are so many people who are unstable because they're not even well fed. They're not even nourished. As within, so without. The nourishment of the body is necessary, but it's a reflection of how we're nourishing our mind. Are we nourishing our spirit? And as you said, beautifully said, you're making the choice not to engage in that game. That's because you're taking responsibility for, okay, I got to get my mind trained, body in alignment, and soul activated. I got to be listening to that, and allows you to work together. People who have done that then move in Maslow's hierarchy. Then it's a different level. Instead of physical needs, it's safety needs. That is when we understand health, employment, property, security. Those things are important. We're still operating more ego than God, but we're doing, maybe we're at 70% ego, 30% God. We're here, we're at 90% ego, 10% God, if that. Then we move to those social needs. And when those social needs are met, because we're doing the work of the heart, now according to Maslow, and again, all of this works so well together, then we move into family, love. That's where love kicks in, because it's a heart chakra. We look to belonging. We look to, okay, how can we do things that are for the greater good? Your mind moves out of me into more of a we perspective. Anybody who is out there bashing others because of their choice in politics, clearly through their abruptness and their rudeness and their anger and their fears, they're showing you they're scared. They're scared, and they're not nourished mind, body, spirit. They are in survival mode. From a soul perspective, if you understand that we all have free will to incarnate or not, and we write the script that we want to experience, meaning we always have exit points to move to a higher frequency through this journey or to go into a lower frequency. If somebody doesn't want to see another way, it is on us. This is what real love is, which is unconditional. You can continue to be angry and mad and think this is the best candidate or that one. It's okay. I love you no matter what, because you have the same free will God gave me. One who can see things like that moves to a level of psychological understanding, emotional understanding, physical understanding, begins to collaborate with those who are serving those who want that. And I'll tell you, Jody, I went through a period not too long ago. The 2016 elections began to open my eyes. The 2020 elections and then COVID made it very clear for me to see that much of the spiritual community that I was a part of was not seeing things the same way that I did. And I had to pull myself out of that community. And I saw my ego judging these. How can these spiritual people not see this? How can they say we create our own reality? This is the insanity of the ego. This is a double standard. Professing that we follow the teachings, that I create my own reality, and then blame you for making me sick. How can you create your reality and blame me? Because then you're creating a reality that says other people have power over you. So then you're not really focusing on creating the reality you want. You're because it's ego. Ego is saying they still have power over you. And when people were banished, not allowed to come in if they didn't wear the mask or didn't have proof of the shots or whatever it was, my ego, God, it's like, wake up, people. Look at your principles. Your principles are very clear. You create your reality. Don't give me power. Then I had to forgive myself for judging. I had to forgive myself for thinking I was superior, that I had it, I knew these things and you don't. And then I had to move to the gratitude for them showing me the frequency that they are choosing to play in this game. They're choosing that ride, but they were making it easy for me to see, I don't want to be on that ride. Let me focus on the ride that I want. And it gave me the opportunity to become more responsible for my vibration. And I began to realize that I was trying to save spiritual people who were not understanding things the way I understand them. And I realized that is not love. That is not love. That is spiritualized ego all the way in superiorness. That is not love. Did I have truths that I was working with? Yes, it's true. We all create our own reality. But if somebody is determined to say, you have power over my happiness, because this person got elected, now I'm going to be unhappy. Like Layla was saying, she was happy for 4 years before and unhappy for 4 years. Then other people control her happiness. That is pure ego. One of the most difficult things on this journey is to recognize that we have to watch what we say and eliminate the double standards. If I am going to respect all beings as children of God, it has to be all beings. It can't be these beings except for those. I can't say I create my reality and then say, but the government creates my reality. It's got to be one or the other. Double standards allow for two opposite things to somehow be part of my reality, and I accept it in my mind because the ego is insane. But when you commit to one reality, one belief system that is consistent, that is when you begin to raise your frequency, move to the places of achievement that Maslow called the self-esteem level. And when you move to a place when you are operating, connecting all your knowledge, your influence comes from those higher chakras, you move into self-actualization and eventually transcendence. Those who want to transcend the egoic game while they're on the planet are the ones who are in the world but not of it. And those become the examples through the peace, through the gentleness, through the not engaging and trying to change anybody, are the ones who have come to really respect what free will is. Everyone has the ability, because God gave it to us, to create whatever experience they want. And when we move to that understanding, we are in neutrality. There are no good or bad experiences. There's just the ones you've been on, the ride you've been on, don't want to be there anymore. And like training wheels on a bike, you just take those off of your bike, but don't judge anybody who still wants to have those training wheels. Feeling the ego, living from the ego, experiencing what the ego does is an important part of the journey because it provides the contrast for those who, like you, don't want to play that game that way anymore. And politics, as anything, are beautiful mirrors because as within, so without. Ego plays a political game in us. When we let the ego buy us out by, it runs our lives because we allow it to be right. And we do the things that pollute our body. We do the things that pollute our mind. But the ego convinces us it's right. It's politics. It's plain politics. It's lying to us. It's doing things. It's deceiving us. Well, of course, it's going to happen on the outside. But when you decide, no, wait a second, I'm going to have an ego while I'm in human form, and I think I'm separate, and I think I'm Laina. I have an ego, but ego, you're going to represent me according to what the Holy Spirit says about me. Now you take control. And I see that that's what's happening in the political arena. Some are wanting to take control of the insanity of the ego and bringing in some sanity. That's why we're hearing so much talk about God, even though it may not necessarily be the God that A Course in Miracles teaches, because it's more, there's some fear in there. It's a movement toward the recognition of God again. We have to allow talking about politics and religion possible again. And that comes only when somebody is grounded and centered and can speak about God and what politics and representation should be from a calm place, because we have built our house on solid ground, meaning love first and foremost, and love is unconditional. No conditions for what anybody else wants to do. But those who want to operate in this frequency are finding themselves, and their energy is to co-creating, not to beating down or shaming or blaming. That's because, like you said, that's to let the ego take over. I don't want my ego running the show, so I focus on what is it that I want to experience, because God has given me the laws that I live under. And then all these human laws, I play with them, but none of them run my reality. I just play with them because if I like them, they resonate. And that is contributing to the co-creation of not supporting things that are nonsensical. So that's that. Anybody else? I hope that helps, Jody. And again, take what resonates, leave what doesn't. Takes a lot of courage to pull out of some of the systems that are running the world, but that's part of the journey that we have the ability to participate in. Anybody else? I am so grateful you guys came today. I'm sure this call will be helpful to whoever wants to hear it. So many amazing, amazing opportunities ahead for us to co-create a reality.
Laina, I want to share with this wonderful group my experience. My name is Julia. And you know what I learned during the process? I learned to trust God, and his amazing plan, his beautiful plan for each of us, and for the situation. And when I'm at this point, when I'm looking at events happening, at people's emotions and what each person going through, I kind of trying to look at everything from the distance and see the God's will. Of course, with the opportunity for each person to create its own reality, because it's humans' will on this planet, in this matrix. So, and that's actually gave me such a wonderful feeling of freedom, because I can be responsible only for myself, for my thoughts, for my way of thinking. And somehow I understood and I realized that my position, not my position, but I mean my state of not mind, but I would say my condition, okay? affecting things happening around me. And this is beautiful. So I, in this process, first of all, we have to trust, like you said, I agree with every word what you're saying, that when we're in connection to our spirit, to our goodness, I'm still thinking too that we have to connect to our goodness and God's spark, I would say, and see if you know yourself really well, you can understand where's your true self and where's the ego, where's the your mind playing games with you, but that's the process of knowing yourself really well. And when you see, okay, this is true me, and true human, God's child on this planet, will wish the best for yourself and for people around you. Again, if like, you know, in this process, learning more things about yourself kind of sort of helped me. Again, I'm repeating myself, I'm sorry, but in this process, it's helped me to see that beautiful God's plan. That's the only thing what I'm just want to mention. And thank you for this meeting.
Well, thank you for being here, Julia. So good to see you.
Of course.
I haven't seen your face in a little while. Well, what you said is so spot on. Everything is an opportunity to know ourselves. Nothing out there in the world is not it's all directly a reflection of who we are. If we're blaming and shaming and scared, then the world, we're going to see evidence of why we should be scared, because it's God saying, I love you so much. If you want to be scared, I'm going to let you be scared, because God's love is unconditional. And if you take it and you go, my gosh, I've been scared for years. I don't want to be scared anymore. Why am I scared? Then you come into that journey of self-awareness. And we can only come to that journey of self-awareness when we decide we're done with the suffering. And anybody who is suffering and continues to be upset and continues to validate that for the next 4 years they're going to be miserable, that only bad things are going to happen, guess what? Deep down inside, they are enjoying that frequency. Otherwise, if they were no longer enjoying it, they'd be looking for a way out. Anyone who is not looking for a way out of their condition at a soul level is enjoying playing that vibration. That's where they want to be. And that is such a difficult concept for people to understand, because it requires that you see the world without victims. There really are no victims. When we listen to the ego, we play the role of victim and bully, because that's a frequency. But when you come to the acceptance that there are no victims, is because you've done the work of self-awareness and you realize, I am the only one who feels the result of all of my thinking. If I stop seeing Trump or Kamala as my savior, I stop feeling like a victim. If I stop seeing them as my abusers, I stop feeling like a victim. Once we connect that our thinking creates our feelings, that is what the journey of self-awareness leads us to. That's when freedom really begins. Until you know everything you feel is self-generated. And I'm not talking about the body. Somebody pokes your body, does something to your body, you're going to feel the body sensations, but the interpretation of what is happening to you, oh, they're killing me, they're hurting me, they're abusing me, those thoughts are going to create a sense of victimization. But if you elevate your self-awareness to the level of God, of Jesus, and you accept that you and God are one, then they're hammering a body that is not even real. You're not identified with the matter. You are identified with the energy that you are. And it's like those nails are going through butter, because it's not killing you. You are the soul. They're killing the body. And those two are no longer seen as one, but rather this is a vehicle. Somebody wrecks my vehicle. It doesn't hurt me. It doesn't affect me. Do I fix a car? Sure, if I want to. So we have to go through exactly what you said, a process of self-awareness that requires maturity, that requires that you be done with playing at the low frequencies of an immature, wounded child seeking for mommy and daddy to save you. We see the people who are upset about the results of the election, or who are boasting about the results of the election, are operating in that frequency. And that's okay, because as powerful creators, God loves them equally, because all of us are prodigal children. All of us are going to get a big party when we move to the other side. And then we can look back and go, wow, that was a fun ride. I was in the in the crazy house for a long time, and that was so fun. I was in the, this roller coaster, and that was fun. And I was in this situation, and I was floating through the love canal, and that was really fun. Do I want to go back? Do I want to do it again? Is there more to be experienced there? At a soul level, everybody's exactly where they want to be. Because what wakes up is when the soul is ready to end the game of the ego. I'm going to say that again. We wake up only when our soul is ready to end the game of the ego. If somebody's in the ego, the soul's not ready to end that game. Respect those who are operating at that frequency. That is how we learn to trust, as you said, Julia. That's where we learn self-love. That's where we learn forgiveness. But the soul has to be ready. Nobody can make the ego ready. Ego's never ready to wake up. The soul, through its own contract, through the script that is written, is the one that decides to say, I'm done with this game. And if we can just focus on what's happening, if you like more of this, then support that. If you like more of this, then support that. Or stay neutral and don't get involved with any of it, but send love to all beings, because you know that they're all creating what they want to experience. And that is a difficult concept for anybody who believes somebody is being victimized. Now, as a creator, it is our responsibility to do whatever we can for those who are underage, because they don't really have a voice in the way that society operates. You got to wait till you're 18 to be an adult. There are children who right now are being absolutely abused. And can you say those souls chose that? Absolutely. But as a human, those children come in looking for the adults that are going to take care of them until such time that they can make their own thoughts and decisions and align their mind, body, and spirit if they want to. But as a parent, and we're all, back to the salvation of the world depends on me from A Course in Miracles, our role is to understand that we are here to be an example of the light. And you can't be an example of the light if you allow those especially closest to you to suffer and say, you're a creator. My 3-year-old grandson, you're a creator. You hurt yourself. You stabbed yourself. This must be what you wanted to experience. That would be an irresponsible playing the role of parent or grandparent, or one who is here in service to the greater good of all. Adults, they're on their own. They have the mental capacity to make those decisions. A child still needs help because of the physical part of the body catching up with the maturity of the mind. But anyway, and the emotions, which of course, that's such an amazing thing. Next Wednesday on the Ascension with A Course in Miracles, we're going to focus on lesson 76, which is all about I am under no laws but God's. When I studied that lesson, and it was telling me that things like, I'll just read this one section in paragraph number 4. Those who, paper strips meaning money, metal discs meaning coins, round pellets meaning pills, fluid pushed into your veins meaning shots, through sharpened needles to ward off disease and death. You really think you are alone unless another body is with you, meaning you need somebody to take care of you and protect you. It is insanity that thinks these things. You call them laws, money laws, medicine laws, education laws, and put them under different names in a long catalog of rituals that have no use and serve no purpose. You think you must obey the laws, and it uses quotes, of medicine, of economics, and of health. Protect the body, and then you'll be saved. These are not laws, but madness. When I began to really, I made a decision a couple right into when I started Course in Miracles, but a couple of years into my journey, which Course in Miracles did not come into my, wasn't what I was inspired to study for almost 10 years of my journey. When I started to study the Course in Miracles, I heard this voice so clear said, if you take every word as truth from this book, you will experience a freedom that is indescribable. It is not of this world. And when I read passages that tell me that the laws of this world, and breaks them down, the economy, the medicine, the health laws, money laws, government, all those things are madness, I began to operate as if, well, what if I don't follow those rules? What if I don't play that game? Unless, of course, I consciously want to play that game. Something amazing began to happen. I felt the fears that, oh my God, I'm breaking the law, I'm breaking this, I'm breaking that. And I sat and observed my ego just coming into my conscious awareness. And with the Holy Spirit, meaning knowing the truth of who I am as a child of God, powerful creator that I am, I accepted responsibility for my creations. And I decided I don't want to create being afraid of anything outside of me anymore. And it wasn't an easy process, but it was always simple. I just had to choose God's laws instead of the worldly laws. And the more that I made that choice, within a couple of years, I have zero fear about anything on the outside, none whatsoever, because I am grounded in the knowing that I exist in the mind of God, and I'm making this reality up. But I'm co-creating it with other beings, other souls that see themselves as separate. And the choice for me is to play the game and put my energy, physical, human energy, towards the co-creation of a happy dream where we are operating under God's laws, primarily, secondarily, human laws that are designed to serve the greater good. When you can step to a place where you can see clearly that anything that controls is of the ego, anything that preserves freedom is of God, then who to choose to support becomes super easy. It's not right or wrong. It's a matter of, I want to play the game of freedom. I want to play the game of total and complete responsibility and transparency. When I see those who do transparency, that is appealing to my soul because that resonates. When I see people who want to do secrets and control and manipulation, that's of the ego. I don't want to play the game that way anymore. So politics is really simple. It has no power over me, but it is part of the game that I want to play. So I pick the side that operates in God's laws or ego laws. And soon we're going to see that we're going to be two totally different communities on the same planet, if we remain on this planet, but eventually those who are operating under God's laws will not cross with those who are operating under ego laws because we've made a decision to ascend to a higher dimension. Meaning we're playing a different game because all realities exist as one, and soon it's almost like lower frequencies won't even be in your reality because you have made the decision and you have played consistently in the truth of God's laws. What is not of God's will have to disappear because you're not inviting it in through your reactions to it or through your need to fix it or change it. You're respecting that everybody is as God created them and all have free will. And all are the prodigal children that God loves equally, unconditionally. When you mind your own business, then you become one who participates in the co-creation for the greater good of all. And that is, then you make that your business. That is absolutely amazing. Does anybody have anything else you want to share or say, or before we complete? Wow, I'm so grateful that we did this, and some of the ones who wanted this aren't even here. I'll send them this video.
Thank you, Laina, so much for all this time. Just one little note. The day before the elections, I was posting on Facebook, please send blessings to everyone who has voted differently from the way you voted.
Beautiful. I saw that. Thank you so much. Because yeah, that is unconditional love.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, Elliot's a beautiful being. Thank you all so much for being here. And I'll post this on Facebook if you guys want to share it or watch any of it again. I appreciate
Thank you, Laina. This is
Love you.
great.
Love you so much. Bye-bye.